Say my name. I am awake. I am the danger. I am the one who knocks.
Welcome once again to Breaking into Breaking Bad. This is Clifford, and I'm here with my brother Caleb Humphrey. This is Season 5, Episode 5, Dead Freight. If you haven't seen this episode in a while, I'll give you a little recap of what happens. This is one of my personal favorites. You know, where we left off, there was some uncertainty about where they were going to get the methylamine that they make their meth with. Their supply, they thought, might be tapped. They thought Lydia, their supplier, might have turned on them. So in this episode, they find out that Lydia, in fact, had not turned on them, but that the DEA was closing in and had kind of made that source not a tenable option. And so Lydia actually comes through with this, sounds like a crazy plan to hijack a train, and that's loaded with a whole tank full of methylamine, and to steal it out while it passes through some forgotten desert part of track in New Mexico. And Walt decides that, yeah, let's do it. Let's just do it. So the whole rest of the episode is them pulling off this great heist, and it's high action. It almost has like a Western feel to it, you know, like holding up a stagecoach kind of thing. And it's suspenseful. There's some real close calls, and at the end of the episode, it ends on this real high note of them successfully pulling off this heist in such a way that it's very likely that the train company will never know that they were robbed. And that's the genius of the whole thing. They steal just enough that it's plenty for them, but not enough because they replace the weight of the methylamine with water, that it won't be missed. But then right as you're sort of celebrating with them, it ends with a kind of a gut punch, because Todd, who's one of the guys who worked for the pest control company, who they've brought on to help them with the heist, shoots this kid who happens to have watched them at the very end there as a kind of witness. And it's just sort of like, whoa, they just killed a little kid. And it's it's kind of tough to watch there. And then the credits roll. So that's the episode. The title, Dead Freight, you know, I don't know if there's much else to say about the title. It kind of brings together the two things, freight being the train, and dead meaning the kid, I think.
Yeah,
maybe you could say
that's the only two I could think of, and to kind of go off of that with the opening scene.
Yeah, take us into the intro.
It made you completely forget about the opening scene throughout the rest of the whole episode. You'd completely forgotten about this kid just driving his little motorcycle with his tarantula that he had in his it goes very similar to how Vince Gilligan has done several of his openings. They're just, you think it has nothing to do with the episode, and then sure enough he brings it back, and it was I mean, we'll get into it later, but great episode. Definitely top 3 in my book.
I mean, we can kind of jump around, I guess, a little bit, but yeah, I mean, the intro has this kid. He's just old enough to be cute. You know, he's still cute. He's young enough to be cute, but he's old enough to be out on his own on a dirt bike. And he has a sense of wonder and a fascination with nature. He sees a tarantula. He goes out there, he picks it up with his hands, and he's letting the tarantula climb all over his hands, which is, you know, kind of terrifying. Then he puts it in this jar. You're like, oh, he's cute. He's going to take it home. And it's like a pet, you know. What? But then you're right. Then you completely forget about him until the very, very, very last 30 seconds of the show, when they're celebrating the heist, and they turn around and there's the kid, and he's looking at them, and we don't know how long he's been watching them.
Right.
And he just waves innocently at them, and they all kind of awkwardly wave back, Walt, Jesse, and Todd. And then Todd, who, you know, we don't know well at all, and he kind of comes off as, you know, just kind of a normal guy, just reaches into his pants, pulls out a gun, and shoots this kid. And Jesse loses it. And then we realize, oh man, there's something not quite right about Todd. Like,
yeah, he didn't even hesitate. And this was an innocent child. Couldn't have been more 14 years old, just chilling there. You feel like you could have come up with a lot of different ways to react to that. And it was funny. I actually have to, it's funny in a sense. Let me explain. I was actually talking to one of my coworkers, Walker, today about this episode because I had watched it last night, and he had showed me a clip where they actually reversed it, and it showed Todd killing the kid, and then it showed them rejoicing with excitement when they took the heist out. So it looked like they were like, "Yeah, Todd, you killed him!" Like, yeah, and it's really eerie, but also
it's really dark. It's really dark,
but but it was. I had never seen that before, which is strange because most of the things I've seen several times, as you know. But I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's really super dark, but
back to the actual episode.
Yeah, well, so I'm gonna go back to a scene in the middle of the show, and we'll build up to it later on. But there's a scene where Mike they're sort of trying to figure out what they're going to do with Lydia, because Mike thinks they can't trust her. She's completely compromised. What are we going to do? And and she's providing this train scenario, and Mike's walking through all the details, and he's like, how are you gonna rob a train? You're obviously gonna have to hold the driver of the train at gunpoint, tie him up or whatever, but now you've got witnesses. And he says there's two kinds of heists: those where you get away and those where you leave witnesses.
Right.
And that's in the middle of the episode, right? But and obviously Todd's not there to hear it, but Todd has that sort of same logic. But what's different is you can imagine that if it had been Mike with them and Mike saw the kid, Mike would have rolled his eyes in a kind of like, oh my gosh, I hate what I'm about to have to do right now. This is going to suck.
Do you think he would have pulled the trigger?
I think so. Because he knows the same logic. You cannot leave witnesses. But critically, Mike, it would have weighed on Mike heavily, and it doesn't weigh on Todd at all. It's a feather. Todd just says, okay, well, obviously we have to kill him. Let's just kill him.
See, I think Mike would have probably taken the kid, maybe, or just said, you know what, it's a bust. We have to get out of here, and forgotten about the methylamine or something at that point. Like I don't know. I don't see him actually killing
okay. So we're in hypothetical land. It's hard to say. My point though is that it's simply this: that Mike is a guy who, like Todd in that moment, I think has ruthless logic. He's ready to kill Lydia without mercy, knowing that she has her kid and who's going to be completely screwed up, right? Like, he's like, no, we just got to shoot her. Like, he's cold, hard logic about that. But I think he still has a kind of human moral sense about him.
Right.
It doesn't mean he's going to do the moral thing, but that he's going to do the maybe immoral thing, fully knowing what he's doing.
Right.
Yep. No, the logic here. And just contrasting him with Todd in the whole thing is kind of interesting. So
right.
Anyway, we're kind of working backwards here. So that's the very end, and we have to kind of deal with that because it's such a heavy thing at the very end. But let's go back to the beginning of the show. So, or the beginning of the episode. So
so Walt gets cancer. And,
right. right. Yeah. No, there's too much. Let's just go back to the beginning of this episode. It starts off with Walt visiting Hank, and he shows off his watch that Jesse got him, and Hank's super impressed. And he's like, wow, man, nice new watch, and you got these new cars. Like, you're doing all right, And they make some small talk, and Walt kind of awkwardly says, can I talk to you, privately? And Gomi's there, and he's like, Gomi, do you mind if I just kind of talk privately, with Hank here? And Hank picks up kind of right away. Oh, something on Walt's mind, and he's throughout the show. There have been many times when Hank has said, Walt, if you ever need to talk, like, I'm here for you,
right.
like, So the door's been open, so here it is. And then Walt, I think, kind of expertly sets him up with this emotional weight, and he says, "I just don't think Skylar loves me anymore." And like he does it all purposely to make Hank feel very uncomfortable. Where Hank's like, "Oh, yeah, man, you know what? I'm gonna get a coffee. Can I get you coffee? Cream sugar. Like he wants to get out of there, and it's perfect. And so he leaves for a minute, 2 minutes, and then Walt bugs the office. And I love how the way they do it, where he has a split second at the very end to finish putting that bug behind the picture in the frame, and then when Hank comes walking back in, he's looking at the frame, and it works perfectly because he pretends to be admiring the marriage that Hank and Marie have.
Yep.
Because he's looking at the picture. Anyway, the whole thing's done, I thought, pretty well as far as it's believable. I'll say that it's very believable.
Walt's confidence in this episode has jumped, I believe, considerably, with him just like dealing like, I'll deal with Hank and get this bug planted, and later on, I'm sure we'll get to it, where he interrogates Lydia.
Right.
He's just taken on the role of the guy, kind of interfering almost in Mike's role. But yes, that whole theater with Hank was great.
Well, so you said it right there, theater. I mean, what it is, this is a very Shakespearean thing. I think we've noted this in the past. It's a play within a play. In other words, we know that Bryan Cranston, what's his name? Is that I say it right?
Bryan Cranston.
Bryan Cranston's acting as Walt, but now Walt is acting inside the show. So it's a show within a show. Like it's an actor acting. So it's a double layered thing. So it's just like shows the talent that he has, that he's able to convince us that he's not really being genuine, but he's being genuine enough that Hank believes him. And it's not sort of put on. It's not sort of fake. Like we can imagine being Hank and believing the show that Walt's putting on, even though that we know that the whole thing's an act put on by an actor. So interesting scene for that for all those reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So then the next scene, as you already alluded, is them terrifying Lydia. I mean, they handcuff her to the table, and they're like, and what's cruel is they're debating her fate in front of her, and they're like, yeah, should we kill her? Should we not? Like, she's like, I'm right here, like.
Yeah, and Mike is obviously he tells them like why he's so motivated, because like, she put a hit out on me.
Right. I mean, fair enough, man. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Fair enough. And then when she finally gets, like, when they hear them that it wasn't her, she's asshole. Just,
right.
Rightfully so, too. So
yeah. So let's just remember what's happening. So when Jesse comes back and says, "Hey, I was going to pick up the barrel of methylamine, but Lydia and I discovered there was this sensor GPS detector thing on it, tracker. We aborted the mission." And Mike immediately says, "Oh, she planted that." Right. And then there's this, and it's like, I got to go kill her. And Jesse's like, no, I don't want to do that. Let's hold it to a vote. But what we learn in this episode is that what Jesse meant was let's find a way to test her to see if that was actually. In other words, he doesn't say, "Yeah, you're right, she did do it, but let's forgive her." He says, "Let's give her the benefit of the doubt and test the hypothesis, and then we'll do what we have to do if it proves necessary." And so, to everyone's surprise, I think we learn, because they get to listen in on the phone call that she makes to Hank. It says, "Hey, I found this tracker. Was that you guys?" And Hank says, "Oh, well, let me call you back." And then he calls in, his I don't know who he calls, but he says, "Hey, did you guys put a tracker on one of the barrels on the outside?" And they're like, "Yeah, well, sort of." And he's like, "You idiots." So then and Walt and Jesse and Mike are listening in, and they learn, oh wow, it really wasn't Lydia. The DEA did that. So there they are.
She actually saved them.
Yeah, she actually did. Right. And then she provides the plan for how they're going to get methylamine after that. She could have just said, "Hey guys, like, this is it. Like, I'm out of here. we got to have nothing else to do with each other because they're watching us, and so
Yep.
we got to have just lay low. But she says, no, I know how we can do this, and I will call you between midnight and 2 a.m. when I learn exactly on which part of the train the tank of methylamine is, and you can set up the whole thing and steal it. And what's kind of clear is that she knows a lot about her job. She knows all about the relay system and automatic, what happens when the train goes down, and she knows a lot, and she demonstrates that. So that helps them believe we can pull this off, because she's telling us if we do it in this spot, no one will ever know.
And I think she earned Walt's respect when he questioned her about, did you really put out a hit on Mike? And she said yes, because this is why, and it needed to be done. And we already know how Walt feels about those 9 guys that are in lockup that they're paying for. So I felt like he was able to connect with her,
absolutely,
and respect
absolutely
why she did it. So
no, you can't hate the player. You just got to hate the game.
You really do.
But he respects. Game recognizes game is what I mean. Like he's like, yeah, I've probably done the same thing. So Lydia tells him that she can deliver, quote, an ocean of methylamine. But then I don't know. I was fascinated by this part where she says, you have to promise me. I want you to promise me that you're not going to kill me if I tell you about this. And Walt says, Lydia, sweetheart, you ain't got any leverage at this point. Like, why should I promise? Like, I can promise how I want, but there's nothing that you have to enforce that promise on me. You've got nothing on me. You're here handcuffed to this table, and we're debating whether or not we're going to kill you. You are in our hands. You don't have anything on us. So you can either help us, or you can not, but you don't have anything on us. But that very cold Machiavellian power dynamic on display there, I thought was really fascinating. Walt says, look, we'd love it if you helped us out here, but if you don't, it's not like you've got anything on us. But it also shows the emptiness of promises. And this is something to harken back to a political philosopher named Thomas Hobbes, who basically has the same kind of way of thinking, that men's promises are empty without real power and force behind them. And so he has this whole political philosophy of society, that making an argument for absolute government, sovereign monarchy, where he says you've got to empower some force in society to have a monopoly of violence on everybody else. And that's the only way you'll get everyone to follow through with their contracts, keep their word, be kind to other people, and do what's right, do what's rational, is what he says. But you can't count on people being rational and doing the thing that makes sense for them, even if honesty is the best policy, because it's going to come back around to help you if you're honest and other people will be honest. He says that's not how it works. Unless you've got real leverage, real laws with teeth in them, people will not obey them. You can't just say, hey, it makes sense for you not to commit crimes, therefore don't commit crimes. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
And the world that Hobbes describes is one of chaos and violence. And that's sort of the world that Walt is inhabiting right now. And I love when he's back home and he's talking with Skylar, and they're doing the same kind of negotiation about the kids. Skylar wants them to stay at Hank and Marie's, so where they'll be safe. And she says exactly what she said. Just a couple days ago, you said, Walt, that there was a gun to your head. I don't want to live in a world where guns are to people's heads kind of regularly, because I know that ultimately that puts my children at risk.
That part was kind of big for me watching it this time around, because she broke it down very clearly for Walt.
Right.
As long as you are doing this, the kids will not be here, because of what you just said, that story about how you were bragging about this gun being pointed to your head. And at that moment, it zooms in on Walt's face, and you could tell he is left with the choice: continue this way or have my kids back. right? And he chooses to keep going. So the whole idea of him doing this for his family has slowly been deteriorating, but at that moment, he just chose not to, like completely gone. And he is all in on this. And then she makes the comment because she sees the dirt on his pants, like, oh,
Yes,
you
right.
burying a body, and then he loved this opportunity to brag a little bit, like robbed a train, sweetheart, like just laid it out like this. I am all of a man's man. You probably had no idea I was capable of doing this.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, remember also the however many episodes back when she walks into the pool and she puts on this whole scene, and there's this back and forth. They're sort of gaming out what are you going to do next? Well, I'm going to do this. Okay. Well, when you do that, I'm going to do this. And when I do that, what are you going to do then? And remember in that scene, Skylar loses because she says, "Okay, if you do that, then I don't know what I'll do because I'm screwed. I actually don't have a plan." And he calls her out on it. In other words, Walt says, "At the end of the day, you don't have leverage on me. You can't keep playing this, and I can." And so I'm wondering, doesn't that same logic, like what happened to that logic? In this scene, she says, "I agree to go along with your plans. I will be the wife that plays along with the story, but I'm not going to have the kids here." She's offering him that deal. And it's the same kind of deal that Lydia's offering. Let me offer you this train plan, but if you don't take it, I have nothing on. I can't force you to. I have no way to force you not to kill me. And so, where Walt calls Lydia out and says, "Look, sweetheart, you got no leverage on me." He doesn't do that to Skylar. He doesn't say, "Well, you can't keep the kids away forever."
Yeah.
So
Walt Jr.'s not happy with it. That's for sure.
Well, right. That proves the point, is that her plan is cracking. It's got all these cracks in it. It's not stable. They can't do it forever. Walt Jr. is not going to just grow up, the rest of his days, however long he'd be dependent at Hank and Marie's.
Right. With no reason other than because we're your parents and we tell you so.
Right. Yeah, that was interesting, right? Because what does that mean? It resorted to force, not reason. He says, "Give me one reason why I should do this." And it comes down to, because you owe me as your father the obligation to obey me without reasons.
Right.
And it's a kind of force play, but it means that Walt's out of reason. Anyway, I'm just highlighting that there seems to be a discrepancy between Walt's clarity in his dealing with Lydia, where he says, "You got no leverage on me," and a lack of clarity when he's dealing with Skylar, and he doesn't force it like he could with Skylar. Maybe I'm just thinking out loud. Maybe it's because Skylar has kind of teased that she's willing to pull the nuclear card and just be like, "I'll kill myself, or I will go crazy. I will feign madness." But remember, he had already said, "I'll just lock you up in an insane asylum. We'll just put you in a crazy home," And the way he says it, we're like, yeah, he'll do it too.
Yeah.
Like, he's not going to lose any sleep over it. In fact, in that scene with Hank, when he says, "She doesn't love me anymore," like, we know he doesn't really care. He's at that place already. All right, well, let's talk about the heist.
So
you got
let's
something,
talk
Dad?
about how the heist came together. It was
Okay.
very, very similar, almost to the T, of how Jesse came up with the idea of the magnet.
Yes, magnet.
And
Yeah.
how it shows Mike and Walt arguing on the most logical way to do things, and then it shows Jesse in the center of the film as it zooms in, and he's just coming up with this thing. It shows him in this episode with the straw in his drink, and he sees the water come out of his straw, and then that's when he's like,
Oh, I missed that.
yeah, no, that's where he got the idea, and they both obviously were like, oh my gosh, he's right. And so, yeah, go on. Anyways, that part was brilliant, I thought.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this was sort of classic Breaking Bad, where it brings back some chemistry, where Walt is explaining to Todd's, because they dig these giant holes in the ground to hold these two tanks. one for water, one that's empty that's gonna hold the methylamine. And Todd's like, why do we need water? I don't understand. And Walt goes, well, the density of methylamine is, and he's like, we only need to refill so much water in the tank in order to replace the amount of weight that, because it's going to be weighed. I mean, there's just a really sort of cool amount of detail that they figured out that they knew so that they could feasibly pull this off. It almost had like a Mission Impossible, air to it, with like cool equipment and just sort of expertise in the air. Like they know what they're doing. When they have the guy who's Saul's guy, who drives the pickup truck or the dump truck, and he pulls in front of the tracks and breaks down, quote unquote, right there, and he's like, I don't know what to do, stop the train because my dump truck just broke down right on the tracks. Like, oh man, of all the luck, and he's trying to figure out how to delay them, whatever. And then that guy with the big truck shows up and like, I can just push you out of the way. And he's trying to come up with ways to sort of, no, I wouldn't want you to hurt your bumper, and all this. Anyway, it had a kind of comic air about it because of how accidental and forced and artificial, I guess is the word, the whole thing was, to set up the situation that they needed in order to extract the methylamine and put back in the water. Anyway, I don't know. It just had a very Mission Impossible feel to me.
Well, especially since Walt was pushing it for about 20 seconds there. Hank was like, all right, that's it. No more. We got plenty. And he really wanted to get to 900 gallons. And
yeah,
he was pushing it really hard. But it was, oh man, right when Todd had to jump off and then Jesse had to lay flat, and oh man, it's just the rush that they feel like, the whole thing about people think about the Roman Empire. Like, this is what I think about, the train heist. And it's just, so good.
Yeah. I mean, what is shown? What are we meant to see? What is revealed in Walt waiting? Because it wasn't like,
it's the confidence.
If we don't get 900 gallons, it's not going to work. No, like it'll work with 800 gallons. Is it just greed? Is it his like, I want to beat the system. I want to win this game.
I think it's like, this is the goal that I put, and I'm going to make it because I'm Heisenberg. I'm Walt. I am the man, and we can do it because I say so. He is just going to the brink of every single thing, and it shows, especially with this, where it could have gotten them all busted if they wasn't able to lock it up in time.
Yeah, I mean, so Walt pushes them to the very end, very edge, and it's crazy is they sort of just follow orders,
and
they don't really have to. I mean, they could say, nope, sorry, this isn't worth it. I'm aborting mission, but they don't. They wait for Walt to give the order, and then they have to put everything back so that it looks like nothing ever happened.
Yeah,
which was very intense, but extremely fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, the ending was rough, but I love how nothing was said. You just hear Jesse scream no, you see the boy go down, and then it just right to credits.
I'm sure I'm sure this is going to be kind of fleshed out in the next episode or future episodes, but am I wrong? Is there not a previous episode where it's the line is said or the topic is discussed? It's not like I'm killing kids, or I wouldn't kill a kid, or I don't shoot kids, or I mean, obviously we're reminded of when early on when Gus Fring set things up to kill the kid who's
right. He said, "Do you think I would harm a child?"
Right, exactly.
But then
the assumed answer is no.
Yeah, but then he also threatens Walt with, "I will kill your infant daughter." So
Gus being.
Yeah, sorry. Gus says that to Walt. "I will kill your infant daughter."
Yeah, that's right. So let's think about that. So what happens is Gus's thugs kill the kid.
Right.
And Gus makes us think they did that because they were acting rogue. I would never tell them to do that. But then we learn, no, actually, Gus certainly would just tell them to do that. But then remember, there's the next episode after that, or soon thereafter, when Jesse accuses Walt of killing the kid, and Walt's like, I would never do that. I would never harm a kid. And then we learn, actually, you did poison the kid. Like, that was you, Walt. And so what we learned is that everything is sort of darker than we thought.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone assumes, well, I would never do that. I'm not a bad guy. Yeah, I'm having to do bad things, but I'm not a bad person.
Right, because the reason I'm doing it for is justified.
Aha, there you go. It's a good reason why I'm doing it. Therefore, I'm still a good person, though I'm doing bad things.
Right.
Yeah, right. That's the logic that's going through at least Walt's head. And here he's part of a enterprise. He's gotten himself in a situation where, I mean, it's debatable whether or not Todd had to kill the kid. Would Mike have done something differently? I mean, I don't know why they couldn't have just said, they could have just waved and gone on their way, and maybe the kid wouldn't have seen anything, and that was it.
Have a chance.
Yeah, but maybe he had seen enough, and maybe they had to deal with it. And anyway, that kind of a thing, I suppose, is inevitable. You're taking those risks, is what I mean. When you're engaged in this kind of a thing, you have to you're taking on those risks, and you might have to kill a kid if you're going to do that. You got to be willing to.
Mm.
And so that's where they're at.
Yeah. Great episode, though. Loved it.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah. And one other thing, because I remember talking about this with Walker as well today, but
Walker, yeah,
is that one of the reasons why you think, just looking back on the episode, why Todd did what he did is because Jesse told him, this only works out if nobody knows we're here. And then Walt looked at him and said, do you understand? He goes, yeah. He goes, are you sure? He goes, yep.
Huh.
So they made it a point to really
interesting
hide in on that. So Todd might be just trying to show his true colors as far as like, hey, I'm a soldier. I'm here for you guys. I want to be.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Right.
Because he was also thinking, the guy that
obviously one of us has to do this. So
that deactivated the nanny cam in the house one time. So
right. So what does that mean? He's aware of possible contingency,
right?
Things that could go wrong, and yeah, that's right. So he's smart. I mean, in a way.
Yeah.
To end this episode, I just want to bring back to mind a quotation that Skylar says when she's in this sort of confrontation with Walt. She says, "I'm not your wife. I'm your hostage."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just thinking, like, Walt's world is continually turning into a situation where he's holding everyone at gunpoint.
Yep.
In a way.
Yep. And I think ultimately he thinks, I just need to keep doing this long enough, and eventually everything will get better.
Mm-hmm,
and,
yeah.
Or he's just, let's think about that later. Let's postpone that.
Yeah, because another alternative is he's just enjoying the ride. Like, this is actually kind of fun. Like, it's kind of a rush. And that might help explain why he wants to wait until they get 900 gallons, because, man, it's a rush. And I want to feel all of it.
I mean, think how we felt as just watching.
I know.
It made that. I mean, if they just turned it off right then and then gotten away, it still would have been great, but it wouldn't have been that great.
Right. No, we're sort of vicariously enjoying the rush of the risk that he's playing.
Love it.
It's true.
All right, everyone. Well, hope you enjoyed that episode.
I mean, how could you not enjoy that episode?
I know. It was a great one. Both, I'd say, the breaking and into Breaking Bad.
That's right.
But with that said, we love that you guys are here listening on. We just have a couple episodes left, and then we'll be done for the series. But follow us on Twitter and Breaking Into BB. Send us a note. Let your friends know. Like, share, subscribe. The whole 9 yards, and we will see you guys next time.